So I've been eagerly anticipating this deck, and I actually kind of paused a couple days ago working with these blue bones because that's what I want to see how it pairs with the most. And I was just anticipating so much that kind of figured I'd let that one sit for a minute until this arrived. So this is a collage deck, much like When Olga Speaks, except completely different vibe to me anyway. The intent and the purpose is different. It came with this little mirror and this quote in the back, "A good traveler has no fixed plans and no intent on arriving," by Lao Tzu. So here's what we're working with for the backs, is this beautiful kind of like dark pavement type of thing. And then these golden yellow edges, they're not actually metallic, they're like a flat yellow. I think they complement it beautifully, and it sort of makes me think of finding gold in the shadow and that whole notion. So I don't know if she did that on purpose or thinking of that, but it was just something kind of cool that I noticed that comes to mind for me. So the first card we start with, Let Death Be the Soil. Again, I think I mentioned I got this in the rose petal finish. So hopefully you can see I'm like shining it into the light and it is not picking up anything, I don't think. She does also have this in a matte finish, like a, more of a slippy matte type finish. I went with the rose petal because that's what she said her preference was, and I kind of tend to prefer going with whatever the artist picks. I also like rose petal, so I don't have any issues with it. I know some people do, and that's part of why she gave options for it. But just so you can see the artwork up close. So that's where we start. Let death be the soil. Oh, and now we have the charade of personhood. I love that. So my understanding with this deck and her inspiration creating it was that process of re-finding yourself, rediscovering yourself, and coming home to yourself. Maybe after difficult times or in difficult times. And I already got the sense just from seeing previews of the cards that this was going to be the type of deck that's going to be in great for journaling kind of category, because so much can arise in the phrase that's put on the card. And I'm also curious to see how it interacts with other decks, whether that's tarot or another oracle. I really like the cardstock. I think it's a little thinner than When Olga Speaks in a good way. Not that I love everything about When Olga Speaks, but I think with the rose petal, and I'm pretty sure Sasha talked about this too, that especially in this thickness of paper, or cardstock, it shuffles really well. So we'll definitely test that at the end. Oh, if it's meant for you. I don't know, that it's interesting because there's something like a roughness to this journey, but also the softness. And I think that's part of why, to me, the rose petal complements it as well. And I think if you get the matte, the images have, a slightly more crisp feel, just because rose petal does give a softness to things. I think that works really well for this one. Oh, when all is said and done. And the way I'm already thinking that I will mostly work with this, because I may try working with this on its own before I start adding in other decks to the work with it. But I'm kind of just picturing sitting and journaling wherever I'm at, and then pulling a card and allowing it to respond to whatever I've journaled about, and then sitting with that message, conversations with the past. Or doing the reverse and pulling a card and allowing it to inspire the journaling session. Not necessarily working with prompts so much, where I'm going with intentional work, but that might come later as I get to know the deck and get a sense of what I want to do with it, or the kind of work that might be best for it. Permission to exist. And anger well tended to. You know, I really am liking the choppy collage situation lately in collage art in general. There's something about the rawness of it where things are just layered, and it kind of makes me think of dream space, or how I sometimes experience dreams where there are these layers of moments or contexts that are kind of placed in among each other. Miles left to go. This card I think is so beautiful, Resentments. Her expression is everything. But actually both the expressions, which you're only seeing basically half of in both of them, this is sort of like the moment that resentment strikes, and this is the lingering, sitting on resentments kind of energy. And the black and white photography, I feel like there's going to be interesting ways to lean into this and the imagery, but it's the type of deck that you have to sit with in response to what you're pulling for. And I'm kind of placing it in the same category as these blue bones when it comes to that, because I find that to be the case with these blue bones a bit, where it's in the response to something genuine that an answer comes through, and all of a sudden you understand a layer of that card, or a piece of imagery on that card that when you're initially looking at it, maybe you don't latch on to right away. Power. To pause for a moment, and I realize I should probably just zoom you in. The Call. Sugar-coated. Very reminiscent of life right now. But the thing I wanted to point out, having already flipped through the cards, we begin with let death be the soil, right? And then it's sort of like we're going on this journey. The gift of darkness, everything all at once. And I want you to pay attention to what the last card is when we get there. Multitudes within. Messages. Heart-shaped memories. I also really like how the use of color in the font. I feel like that's going to be something to notice with this one. Hardened. Prune the roots. This was another one that was a favorite of mine. Coffee's getting cold. I could just see having this be just a really free-flowing spark to get a journaling session going, or to sit with in response. To kind of pouring your heart out on the page. Everything has its season. So I don't know to what extent my camera's going to let me get nice and close. The things we carry. To worship in flowers. This, actually, if I could get a print of this, because I know she was planning, or I don't know if she actually already has them, any canvas prints, I think they were. But I would love this, the archetype or the symbolism of the lotus rising through the mud is something that has come up a couple times this year. Uncaged. A secret third thing. This is another one I love for the message of it. I think I mentioned in what was probably the last video I uploaded about reading this idea from Carl Jung when you're faced with a decision and you don't know what to decide, to sit with the discomfort and allow the subconscious or synchronicity or what have you coming up with a third unforeseen solution or direction or path. So that's what this makes me think of. And I think that's the nature of this deck, is building in your own associations with it. And to a degree, I also think that's the point of it in terms of taking that journey home, is how much of it is within your control or is really up to you, in a sense. So I'm sort of loving lately having decks that have no guidebook and force you into that place of discomfort. Actually kind of ties in with the Hanged Man, which is the card I pulled at the end of the last video. But this idea of our attention at the threshold, sitting in the discomfort of not having training wheels or whatever you might want to think of it as, and having to sit with your own associations to things. And also having that express permission, where that's the directive, is to lean into your own associations with things and allow a deck like this to unfold naturally in its own way in relationship to you. And in that way, I think this is another deck in my collection that's going to have a very personal feel to it, because that is the nature of it. And I think that's also my impression of the intent of it also. Oh, I called, but no answer. Being able to sit with and settle with your own ideas of things and give meaning to things on your own. I think a deck like this allows you to practice that. Self-soothe. Let there be laughter. Being able to do that with a deck is something that is pretty uncomfortable. I know early on when I started working with cards, that was something I very much avoided. You know, if there was a deck and it didn't come with a guidebook, unless for some reason the imagery was super, super clear, or it was the type of deck that had a very, like Poesis, which has a very clear keyword on it, I, for the most part, avoided anything that wasn't going to explain itself to me. And this kind of turns that idea on its head and says, no, explain me to yourself. And there's a power in being able to flip that and getting comfortable flipping that and being able to embrace one's own way in navigating imagery or phrases or cards, and being given permission to do that, and giving the self, most importantly, permission to do that. Greener where it's watered. And a lot of these messages, a step despite the risk, a lot of them come across as something that most people are going to find very straightforward. But I think cultivating the personal relationship with the phrase and the image, and over time seeing how it responds to things, if you're kind of doing the method of, I'm just going to pour my heart out for a paragraph and then pull a card and see how it responds to what's on my mind. No matter what way you approach it, keeping too many things, this is one where the nuance of what this means and how it shows up is probably going to be unique for everyone. Or I would think might have one thinking different things depending on the context of your life and your story. unburdened. I love that with wild horses. School of life. Brings tears to my eyes. The image in the back of this is also so gorgeous. And the sort of effect it gives. Held, and then also this little portal. Like, that's something you might, because that's where my eye went to. If I were pulling this card, that's kind of what I would lean into, is what in the image stands out to me and how does it relate to this idea? What does it make me feel in response to this idea of being held? To have an archway, because it's not just a cutout doorway, it's an archway, which has a different, even in architecture, has a different sense to it. The light at the end. I am my own home. So again, this was the last card in the deck, and I want to go back to the first because I feel like it kind of is a journey to begin with let death be the soil, and then conclude with I am my own home. And that's sort of the conclusion of the deck. And I really loved that. I don't know to what extent the organization of the order the cards went in was intentional, but that was something I noticed when I flipped through it. This idea of death being the soil for your path to emerge, or a path, a new path to emerge. And then at the end of that path, seeking home, seeking familiarity, or seeking belonging. Finding that the destination is that you are your own home, regardless of the context of everything else going on around you. And I just thought that was so beautiful. So let me put this back in order, because I just want to flip through it one more time before I let it go. And then we'll give it some shuffles, see how that goes. I can already tell it's going to be, I'm really going to like the shuffle of it. And we'll look at what I think will pair with it. Yeah, I think flipping through the deck another time, it's just interesting whether or not this was intended in a specific order to be the chronological aspects of a journey in returning home to oneself. I think it's interesting to explore it from that perspective when first opening it, because once I shuffle this, other than the fact that I've just recorded flipping through it, or I could watch someone else's video, like I'm going to forget the order. But just sitting with that experience of letting death be the soil and realizing the charade of personhood and how transmutation is a slow descent. This journey is just beginning, and you start to realize how much longer it is than you think it will be. Figuring out what, how necessary it is to have to say goodbye and let go of certain things or people or ways of being or thinking. And then getting to that more open space of if it's meant for you and acceptance of that. And then looking back at what you were offered. And I don't know, I just kind of sat looking through it in that way. So I would say if you get this deck, I'd encourage that just as a way to explore it, if that intrigues you, the idea of doing that. Miles left to go, resentments. I feel like, of course, this doesn't happen right at the beginning because the resentments are like, it's almost like rust on your soul or on the relationship you have with others or the past. So yeah, I liked looking through it with that kind of stuff in mind and thinking about what it means to kind of lose touch with yourself and then go on a journey of rediscovering yourself and what it means to come home to that person that you are. So let's see the shuffle. I never really have too many issues. Oh my God, the bend is really nice. Okay. Yeah, the bend on it, super nice with this thinner cardstock. Very nice shuffle. But But yeah, the rose petal doesn't bother me. I know some people get bothered by it, so go with whichever option suits your fancy. Because yeah, the shuffle part's important, right? Because that's, you want to be able to get into a meditative place. And I find personally for me, as someone with ADD, attention issues, which frankly a lot of us have just by design of our culture, society, and whatnot, I think kind of meditating on the way I would do it with this deck, if I'm not doing I already journaled and already have like a little paragraph of reflections or thoughts or ruminations for the day or the moment or whatever it is. If I were just sitting with this and wanting it to be the start of my journaling, I would let my mind wander and see where it lands and see what's coming up for me naturally, not trying to force anything, and then follow a thread in my mind as I'm shuffling until I feel the pull or the nudge to pull a card. And then pull a card and see what's up. See what comes to mind with that card. And something that Remembering the Sweet Fool taught me is being open to receive. And letting that be how you approach it. But these are just ideas, not instructions. And I think whenever anyone's sharing practice, it's good to think of it that way. It's not that there's any set of rules or way of approach that has to be done. And that's what I like about a deck that has its own openness and allows you to be the one to write the story of the cards and all of that. So let's just pull a welcoming card. Or let me sit and do what I just said, and we'll see what comes up in terms of just letting my mind go. Conversations with the past. And School of Life on the bottom. So I was just thinking as I was shuffling just now overhand, pondering and trying to consider where I'm at in my journey of coming home to myself, because this past year's been rough and I feel like I've been trying to climb up a cliffside to get back to me or to get back to what feels like alignment with my story. And conversations with the past is actually an interesting representation of that, because I have been doing a lot of reflection about the past and everything that's led up to this point, not just things that have happened this past year, but going even further back and figuring out how it all ended up here. And the idea of having a conversation with that and calling out for a response to understand would be an interesting thing to sit and journal with. And also to sit and journal with the idea of how the past can inform where we're at in the present in ways that we don't realize. And to sit and have a conversation with a past version of yourself or with a past context that you maybe never really considered or looked at because life moves so quick. I like this idea. And that is the School of Life underneath that. Understanding the past, but also the contextualizing it for how to move forward and what we can learn from all the experiences we have. Even the ones that in the moment we couldn't understand or couldn't comprehend. Interesting. Okay. So the very first deck I'm going to pair this with is the one that I anticipate I will have a practice with between the two. So let's grab her. And that would be these blue bones. And I'm going to back you up just so that we have room to look at them a little bit better. And these blue bones, as I've talked about, is another deck where you are building a personal relationship with the cards. And that's part of why I think they'd work together. But beyond that, it's also that this one is a nostalgic, melancholic deck. And this is, my impression of it is that it's going to be kind of the thread that you follow to find your way home. And I like the idea of those two themes playing together in a reading. I've already seen some people pairing these two, those that had advanced copies, prototypes and whatnot. Shrapnel, spring is not promised. But yeah, I think it will be interesting to pair these together and see how they converse together. Oh, you and I will always be back then with conversations with the past. I like that. Holy in peace, strength and softness. To the stars and beyond, waiting to strike. Revelation and the school of life. Yeah. See, I don't know. I just think they're going to pair together neatly and they're going to talk together neatly. Artistically, they work well together. But I'll just have to see in practice how the cards come out, what cards we get dealt, right? A fish hook and open eye with a season of self-worship. I love that with this card actually, because a fish hook and open eye is from, I'm forgetting the poet's name, but it's a very brief poem. And I think it goes, you fit into me like a hook into an eye, a fish hook and open eye. Kind of giving the drama of perhaps a connection that's not all that comfortable, and that idea of an open eye, a vulnerability being met with a sharp hook, followed with a season of self-worship, would sort of be redirecting the focus to honor yourself, your space, who you allow into it, that kind of a thing. Suffocating, and the cards were dealt. Rest these weary bones with the necessity of goodbye. Dream space, let death be the soil. Kind of funny because dreaming is a little death. The garden, multitudes within. Yeah, so this is sort of what I would plan to do, honestly, is just one card of each. But I think I will work with this one on its own first. Shedding and unburdened. It would be so sweet if it's meant for you. A wish in the dark when it's all said and done. So yes, I think I'll leave it there and we'll move on to another pairing that I'm curious to see if it'll work. Aesthetically, I think it will, but I don't know in actual practice if I would work with them together, but it's one that I definitely want to play around with. So I'll put this one away and grab the next deck. All right, so the deck I want to try it with is Telezma. This energetically, I feel like is going to be different, but I just thought it'd be curious to see them together. I mean, I am inclined when it comes to collage decks to pair them with other collage decks, to be honest. But trying to think. Or photography, you know? But there's a little bit of a hole in terms of just straight up photography decks in my collection. I kind of think I only have one that is straight up photography. But let's see how these pair together. The Moon Unburdened and 10 of Wands. 9 of Cups, if it's meant for you, King of Coins. Yeah, to me, Telezma has a very hot feeling to it, whereas this, even in the cards that have a lot of red, there's a softer feel to it. So I kind of find this interesting. Ace of Coins, spring is not promised. 3 of Wands. The Magician, prune the roots. Princess of Swords. 10 of Swords, conversations with the past. Knight of Cups. Four of Coins, strength and softness. 7 of Coins. Interesting. So I'll do one more and then let's see what else might go along with this. 10 of Coins, waiting to strike. Ace of Wands. I mean, that's kind of cool, actually. Wait. Princess of Wands. School of Life. Queen of Cups. Yeah, so I don't know. This could be a possibility. I think I'd have to really work with it to see. And I don't think I'd be doing that for a while because I just kind of want to get to know this one on its own first. And then I do want to work with it with blue bones. But this is definitely one to consider. And then in speaking of not having that many when it comes to photography decks, I do have one that I tend to pull out a lot, and I know it's a weird one, but I really like this deck. And it tends to go with ones like this, and that is Remembering the Sweet Fool. Now, this is photo collage, manipulation. It's kind of got a couple different things going on. It's not just straight up photography in a sense, but I think it'll fit the vibe. 5 of Points, I am my own home with the Queen of Cups. King of Sticks, an anger well tended to. 8 of Cups. 8 of Hills, the gift of darkness. 5 of Hills. Yeah, I mean, visually, I really like how these pair together. Son of Hills, cry and go on anyway. The Tower. Seven of Sticks, a season of self-worship. 8 of Sticks. And in a sense, what's nice also is that because there's in collage decks a little bit of busyness, the contrast for me is the fact that this tends to be very simple in the imagery, sometimes incredibly simple, but at the same time very poignant. And I kind of like that because it allows this type of an oracle deck to be the main centerpiece, with the tarot kind of just being supporting columns of context, if you will. And I do tend to like to read like that when it comes to something like this, where I'm really sitting with what this oracle card means for me and developing my own language for it and with it. So yeah, that's definitely one I will probably pull out if I were to want it to have some more tarot expansion, because I could also see like pulling a card with this and then asking the tarot to help me. Like, I always do this and put it in the wrong. Turning to tarot to help me understand the context of a particular pull or what have you. The next deck, and I'll just do one of these so that we're looking at more cards, is another collage deck. Deathly Flowers. I really like this with blue bones, even though I don't use it. Like, to me, this is obviously it's a Persephone deck. That's what it was created for. But when I work with it with blue bones, I'm kind of not connecting in with Persephone. I'm using her language or the understanding of her language, but it doesn't feel like I'm connecting with her. So, but for some reason, I feel all right doing that with this deck, whereas Tarot of Persephone's Garden, I kind of don't. That to me is like, I only use it if I'm connecting with Persephone. But I thought these might be neat together. 3 of Air, everything that has its seasons, and Ace of Air. 8 of Earth, multitudes within, 5 of Earth. Didn't 8 of Earth and 5 of Earth come up in the last one too? That's funny. 6 of Water, when it's all said and done, and no. So this deck does have a few extra cards, and I tend to leave them in there. Just for funsies, unless I decide I definitely don't want them in there. But 7 of Water, keeping too many things, 7 of Air. I'm really liking how these might read together, because, for example, with this, keeping too many things, holding too many visions, too many ideas and possibilities, and then 7 of Air can also be self-deception, tricking yourself into thinking certain things are possible when they're not, maybe. Play around with that. Knight of Air, hands that keep talking to a fire. The Lovers brings tears to my eyes, and 7 of Earth. Yeah, I think this would be a pairing that I'd like to play around with. And also, sorry my voice is rough. I think I haven't spoken much today, and I'm probably a little dehydrated, and it's not doing my voice any favors. I keep trying to fix it, but we're just gonna deal with it for today, I guess. Let's see, let me think what else might pair with this. I don't know if I've really even talked about this deck, the Guiding Light Tarot. It's not one I've worked with extensively, but honestly, when I've pulled it out and worked with it, I've been kind of surprised by how much I like it. I mean, I like the imagery and everything, but it does at first feel like it's going to be a very simple reader, but the readings I've done with it, I've found to be very intuitively, I don't know, just unique and clear, I guess. So I don't know if this is going to work visually, but I figured why not try it. Judgment, everything has its seasons, 5 of Cups. The Sun, multitudes within, Wheel of Fortune. The Hermit, when it's all said and done, 9 of Pentacles. I kind of like them together. Hierophant, keeping too many things, 4 of Swords. Yeah, I don't know, this kind of works for me. Again, because it's a simple kind of abstract type of deck, it allows the busier imagery of the Oracle deck to be the focus. 9 of Wands, to worship in flowers, and 10 of Cups. Surprisingly, I really like this. Which is nice, because I don't really have Oracle decks that, like, I immediately think of pulling this one out. But for some reason, when I went to my cabinet, I was like, I wonder if this will work. And I kind of think it does, for a weird deck. Ace of Pentacles, through the mud, Queen of Swords. Neat. The Fool, greener, where it's watered, 7 of Wands. Yeah, so in terms of pulling out tarot decks, I think that's kind of what I had in mind, was these ones, and then this I just pulled out, but nothing else was, nothing else was necessarily calling to me. Let me go back to the cabinet, take another look, see what else might work here. So an oracle deck that I want to check out and think will pair well with this is Death Doula. Both thematically and also aesthetically, I think these will be interesting. Conjure and All In. Connect with the dead, let there be laughter. Wayfinding and Uncaged. Yeah, I think I visually really like them. Pleasure, nature dances with you. But also the way the messages would kind of combine, I'm liking. Solitude, self-soothe. Positioning, I called but no answer. Sun, the call. Beauty and death waiting to strike. I think they just make an interesting pair as a journaling exploration. And the way I tend to work with this is as like a medicine deck to whatever is coming up. But it'll be interesting to see how this pairs up in actual practice or in response to prompts or questions being directly asked. Remothering, a season of self-worship. The cards were dealt with witness love. Serenity, when we break bread. So yeah, that's a pair I will definitely be working with. And I'm sort of, I don't know, I've been on this thing lately of oracle decks with oracle decks, or maybe it's because of the types of oracle decks I've brought in, because I definitely have some that I wouldn't really use that way, but Death Doula, these Blue Bones, and now this one kind of all feel like in that realm of pairing it with another oracle deck feels right to me. So the other deck I figured I should pull out is When Olga Speaks, which has got to be in my top 5 at the very least, if not top 3 favorite card backs. And then it also works to show kind of the cardstock difference, I think, because this is sort of the matte finish versus the rose petal. So actually they feel the same in thickness, but I don't know. I don't know these things. Anyway, we have Forgiveness with Unburdened. Surrender with Self-Soothe. Offering, a season of self-worship. I think these will read beautifully together, and of course, visually they go well together. They're created by the same artist, even though they have a slightly different feel between the two of them, because there is something sort of nostalgic with this that feels a bit different, or maybe more personal in a way than When Olga Speaks, which sort of feels like a guide type of energy to me. The medicine, the charade of personhood. Rebirth, let there be laughter. Yeah, I think this is going to be an interesting one, or interesting pair of decks to work with. Perspective and the things we carry. And I haven't worked too much with When Olga Speaks, so I'm still getting to know it, but I know it a little better than this because I just got this one in yesterday. But I think having the two of them play off one another will be an interesting experience to really see the difference between the two of them and what they're bringing to a reading. Negotiation, everything all at once. Yeah, these are cool. The bridge, miles left to go. So yeah, this is definitely on the list of ones to pull out. I'll just feel it out whenever it seems like When Olga Speaks wants to jump out and add something to the reading. All right, I want to try the Fountain Tarot just to see if this would work, because I think color palette wise it might. And because this was the first deck I ever had, it's sort of safe place for me to go if I wanted to pull in tarot. And maybe, you know, for someone else, the best way to get to know this might be pulling a card from the Oracle deck and then using tarot to help you understand what the message coming through is for you. All different kinds of ways. I don't know. I kind of want to put together a video talking about different ways to approach decks, particularly ones like this where it's really left up to you, because you can approach it any number of different ways to get to know it. 9 of Cups, the charade of personhood, 8 of Wands, or Ace of Wands. Queen of Swords, when we break bread, 4 of Coins. This is the only card in this deck where it always made me think of 5 of Coins, kind of being left out in the tattered cold. But at the same time, I can see it as hoarding resources because there's a sense of lack in the world around you type thing. Anyway, Knight of Wands with the light at the end and Strength. These actually go together visually pretty nice, I would say. And I'm somewhat surprised because I usually don't love collage with decks that aren't collage all the time or aren't photography, or I don't know, maybe I just haven't tried enough. The Devil, what I was offered, 2 of Cups. But yeah, this is another one. Ooh, 7 of Coins, a secret third thing, 3 of Cups. Another one that I think I could totally work with and see pairing together. Interesting. Wasn't expecting that. But I do like this with Sacred Destiny, which I think is a collage, but that's like digital. More of a digital collage. So maybe I shouldn't have been as surprised. Alright, I think I have one more tarot deck that I just want to see. I don't think I would work with them together just because it kind of isn't one I would think of. But Lacrimosa. Let's just give it a go because I'm curious artistically how they pair. And I don't know, people might have shown them together and maybe that's why I'm thinking of this. I can't remember now. But I just want to give it a quick look-see to see if I would like them. Because this to me is very opposite. You know, you have modern collage and then classical paintings. Kind of opposite. But they actually look kind of cool together. Judgment, Prune the Roots, the Moon, the World, the Sum of All Its Parts, and the 8 of Hearts. 10 of Coins, Conversations with the Past, 4 of Swords. 2 of Swords, the School of Life, 6 of Hearts. You know, I actually think visually they go together. I don't think I'd work with these two together just personally because Lacrimosa kind of, I don't know, I kind of want to go different places with it and be immersed in the gothic place of its aesthetic in a way and its way of communicating, or the way I get communication out of it. But could work, so I figured might as well show it. Wow, Death. Spring is not promised, and the 8 of Swords. So I think that is the last pair I have to consider. I'd be curious to know what you would pair with this deck. Like I said, this is one I've really been looking forward to. And also, I feel like the turnaround time from when she opened pre-orders to them being delivered was actually really quick. Everything's relative because different projects have different circumstances and different printers and whatnot, but quicker than I expected. I certainly have pre-ordered or Kickstarted decks that I've been waiting quite a while for. So I was really excited when I saw that she was shipping, and then my copy was shipped, and it arrived super quick because we're in the same state. So very cool. I'm really looking forward to get to know this one as an introspective kind of best friend type of energy, and to explore the ways that as a tool it can be used to help reconnect you to yourself and to your path and to finding your way home, ultimately to yourself, because that is where home always is. Self-soothe. Yeah, I feel like this is a good deck for that type of work, for self-soothing, and I don't know, maybe I'd also put it in the category of catharsis decks, which Blue Bones falls into for me. We'll see as it goes along. Anyway, so thank you for watching. That was a walkthrough of The Long Way Home. And actually, I love that she calls it a visual diary because it really feels that way. Flipping through the cards and exploring them. Oh, I'm very excited to get working with this deck. I'll keep you guys posted as I go along, of course, how I'm finding things. I hope you enjoyed watching. I feel a little bit off on my talking game today, so did the best I could, but I really wanted to record this tonight because I wanted to get working with it tonight. So figured I'd go through it at least in order so that anybody who's interested could take a look at it and maybe get some ideas if you've already ordered it or received it and are kind of thinking what to do. All that said, I hope you have a lovely day, evening, or whatever it is by you, and I will catch you in the next one.